Hello everyone, and thank you for watching my presentation. My name is Camila Rodriguez-Pineda, and I will be talking about the MIT Blackjack team. Imagine walking into a casino, sitting at a blackjack table and walking away with thousands, maybe even millions of dollars without cheating, just by using one thing, your brain. It sounds like the plot of a Hollywood movie, but for a group of students from the MIT, it was real life. For over 2 decades, the MIT Blackjack team mastered the art of card counting, using mathematical strategies and teamwork to legally beat the house. They weren't gamblers in the traditional sense. They were engineers, mathematicians, and strategists who turned blackjack into a game of skill rather than luck. But like all great stories, the rise came with risks, and their downfall was inevitable. So how did a group of college students take on the most powerful casinos in the world, and what happened when the casinos fought back? Well, let's dive into the incredibly true story of the MIT Blackjack team. The MIT Blackjack team story begins in the late 1970s at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. MIT is known for producing brilliant minds in science, engineering, and mathematics. But in a quiet corner of a campus, a few students were using their talents for something unexpected: beating casinos at blackjack. One of those students was Bill Kaplan. Kaplan had already tested card counting strategies in Las Vegas and made a fortune from it. Then he met J.P. Masser, another talented strategist, and they realized that by working as a team, they could take card counting to a whole new level. They started recruiting students from MIT and Harvard, selecting only those who had sharp mathematical skills, discipline, and the ability to stay calm under pressure. But it wasn't enough to just count cards. They needed a system, a way to maximize their winnings without drawing attention. That's when they devised a nearly foolproof strategy that would change blackjack forever. As I previously mentioned, the members of the MIT team consisted mostly of 21-year-old students who were majoring in several different careers. What brought them all together was the rankings at the top of their class. Throughout the casinos that they played at, you would just see 21-year-old students, just normal people, walking around carrying duffel bags with millions of dollars. And as one of the members of the team, Andy Block, a Las Vegas resident, he explained that he was the bookkeeping person of the team of about 50 to 100 players. And he estimated that during that time, the team won about $10 million. Easy money, right? So how exactly did the MIT Blackjack team beat the game? It all came down to a technique called card counting. While blackjack is a game of probability, it's not entirely random. When a deck has more high-value cards, like tens and aces, the player has an advantage over the dealer. The team's method was based on the high-low card counting system, a way to track which cards had been played. And I'll show you an example of it. So here's how the high-low card counting system worked. So here I have just the regular deck of cards. And how it works is that the high cards would be counted as an ace, a 10, a jack, a queen, and a king. They could be of any suit. The low cards would be 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of any suit. The remaining cards, which would be 7, 8, and 9, they would just be ignored because they don't really have an impact or an advantage over the dealer or the player. And so at a regular game of blackjack, let's say the dealer deals the 6 cards, which are 10, a 6, a queen, a 3, an ace, and an 8. So here the way that the MIT Blackjack team did it was that if there was a high card and a low card, they would just pretty much cancel each other out. So here we have a high card, which is a 10, and a low card, which is the 6, and they would just cancel each other out. So they have no point value. Same thing with this queen and this 3, high card, low card, they would cancel each other out. And as I mentioned, 7, 8s, and 9s are ignored. So this 8 is just completely ignored. That leaves us with the remaining ace. An ace, like I mentioned, is a high card. And in their system, a high card with minus would be a -1 point. So they would subtract the 1 point. However, if instead of the ace, there was the 6 remaining. A 6 is a low card. So the low cards add a point. So they would add a point to their system. And that's pretty much the high-low card counting system. Each low card that appeared increased the count, meaning fewer low cards remained in the deck. Conversely, each high card reduced the count, as I explained. When the count was high, the team knew the odds were in their favor and they would bet big. Because the low cards increase the count, that means there has been more low cards that have already been played. So there's more high cards that have yet to be played. So that means they have higher chances to win. But they obviously couldn't do this alone. The team divided roles to avoid suspicions. Spotters sat at different tables, quietly counting cards, but betting small to stay under the radar. When the count became favorable, they signaled a big player, the person responsible for making large bets. The big player would swoop in, acting like a lucky high roller, placing massive bets right when the odds were best. Meanwhile, controllers managed the overall game, keeping everything running smoothly. Another strategy they used to avoid suspicion was the use of keywords for better communication and to signal to other players around when to enter the game and place high bets. They created a keyword for every number from 1 through 18. A few examples are the following. They would use the word tree, which was related to the trunk of a tree and was associated with the number 1, which meant plus 1 point. For a car has 4 wheels, so that would mean plus 4 points. Cats, there is a myth that cats have 9 lives, so that would mean plus 9 points. The plus 12 points, it reminded them of a dozen of eggs. For a paycheck, most people get their paychecks every 15 days, so that would signal a plus 15 points. For a voting booth, the legal voting age is 18, so it would mean plus 18 points. And they would go on, they had a keyword for every single point from 1 through 18. With this method, the MIT team was able to win big without drawing attention. For years, they walked away from casinos with thousands, even millions of dollars in profit. But they weren't invincible. The casinos were watching. At first, the casinos didn't suspect a thing. To them, it looked like pure luck. But as the MIT Blackjack team grew and they continued raking in winnings, their success became impossible to ignore. Some nights, they walked away with hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they weren't just winning in Vegas. They were taking down casinos across the US like Atlantic City and even internationally. Casino owners weren't in the business of losing money. So they started to fight back, using surveillance technology to track unusual betting patterns. And facial recognition software was implemented. Casino security teams were trained to spot card counters. Suspicious players were followed, questioned, and at times even banned from entering casinos altogether. As security tightened, it became harder for the MIT team to operate. Some players were blacklisted, while others just left the game before getting caught. By the early 2000s, the original team had disbanded. The reign of the MIT Blackjack team had come to an end, but their story was far from over. The MIT Blackjack team's story became legendary. It inspired books, documentaries, and even Hollywood movies. In 2003, Bringing Down the House became a bestseller, detailing the team's exploits. 5 years later, the film 21 brought their story to the big screen, introducing it to a whole new generation. However, Andy Block, the member of the team, had mixed emotions about the film 21. In an interview, he mentioned that while the movie was accurate in certain aspects of what actually happened when the MIT team was operating, there are a lot of other details that are highly fictionalized. However, I do believe that these two are good media options to learn more about the history of the MIT team. But then again, they were produced to generate revenue. So of course, certain details are going to be taken out of proportion to keep the story engaging. But beyond the glitz and glamour, the team's legacy lived on in other ways. Many former members used their skills in high-paying careers in finance, data science, and risk management. Fields where probability and calculated risk are just as crucial as they were at the blackjack table. The MIT Blackjack team proved that intelligence, teamwork, and discipline could beat the system. at least for some time. Their legacy remains one of the most fascinating chapters in gambling history, reminding us that even in a game of chance, knowledge is power. But in the end, the real question is, were they playing the game or was the game playing them? Thank you for watching, and that was my presentation on the MIT Blackjack team.